Okay. So as I say, tonight we're reading Jean Klein, and I'm reading from a book called The Book of Listening. It's a really wonderful book because it has excerpts from Jean, but also has excerpts from other people. So it's I think it's a really good book. Okay, so this is Jean, and you know, this again is going to be question and answer. So here he speaks, and he says, you cannot find your real nature. You cannot look for truth or enlightenment. All that you can find is objective. Our real nature is not an object, and so it can never be perceived. When you realize that all you are looking for is an object, and that your real nature is not anything to be found or attained, you go away from looking, and you discover that the looker is what he is looking for. In this approach, there is no system. There is nothing special established to do. It is an approach completely free from all volition and completely free from all intention. You already know moments in your daily life when you are completely free from all intention. You have taken these moments to be absence, an absence of function. But these moments without function are not an absent state. Here there is reality, presence, with which you must become attuned. Question. So there's nothing to improve? One must simply be very peaceful and very quiet? Well, this quietness you will find first in your body. Then you can transpose this quiet freedom from tension onto the level of the mind. But first you must become, as you said, quiet. To become quiet, you must take your body as an object of your observation. First, you will discover that you don't observe, that you come constantly to interpretation, to conclusion, to evaluation and comparison. I mean here a completely innocent observation without any expectation, only taking note of any heaviness or tension of your body. And then you transpose this same quietness on the level of the mind. Question. Well, it sounds so easy, and I find that when I'm by myself and I'm not doing anything, not organizing or cooking or rushing somewhere, there is a possibility of being quiet. But just the fact of having to do something puts me in a different state. I can't seem to keep that quietness and do things. And I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. Jean. But the quietness of the body, the quietness of the mind, is not this quietness of which we are speaking. This quietness, which is your real nature, is beyond mind. When you become more and more accustomed to listening to your body and listening to the movements in your mind, You will one day discover yourself in this listening, in this looking. You can never objectify this looking and this listening. It is totally in the absence of yourself. Is that what you call attention? Yes. It is attention without tension. And attention without tension is when the attention is free from all striving and all anticipation, free from all end gaining. But I don't seem to have control of my quiet body. As I said before, when I'm in a busy situation, I can't control what's going on in me. There's nothing to control. You must only listen. And then when you really listen, the listening refers to itself. In this listening, there is not a listener and nothing to listen to. There's only quietness. There's not systematic meditation. There's not systematic being quiet. Because the moment you look for systematic meditation or quietness, then you create a state. Your real nature is not a state. Your home ground is not a state. It is a total presence. When there is total absence of yourself as being somebody, it is only in this total absence of ourselves that we are the self. Well, do I understand you to say that you don't go through any process in order to detach yourself from identification with the person? The moment you look at fear, anxiety, and all your striving force, your desire to change, you will find space between yourself and what you're looking at. You will find yourself outside the process. Then you are spontaneously detached and not identified. And when you are not identified with the body, you are also detached from the environment, because your environment is only the five senses. So first become aware of your nearest surroundings, your body, senses, and mind. When your observation is really free from all expectation, free from memory, then this observation refers to itself. Awareness refers to itself. What you are looking for can never be found in any object. It is objectless, like love, freedom, peace. You can never put these in the frame of a concept, in the frame of the mind.
Could you read the first two sentences again?
Okay. The moment you look at your fear, anxiety, and all your striving force, your desire to change, you will find space between yourself and what you are looking at. You will find yourself outside the process. Then you are spontaneously detached and not identified. Well, let me continue and then we'll get clarification. Well, does this awareness that you talk about, does this require effort on the person's part, or is it effortless? It is effortless because you are it fundamentally. To be still, you don't need to make any effort. It is only the giving up of effort. When you clearly see that you make an effort, then there is no longer an accomplice with the effort and it goes away. There is nobody who gives up. It is simply giving up. Well, I find that when there is a giving up and I am without intention, then I'm also without interest in self-inquiry. It no longer interests me. Oh, what you observe must be interesting for you. It is the only way to sustain the observation. It is only in the giving up of all old patterns, memory, that your life can appear new and interesting to you. But you must come to the moment when what you observe dissolves in your observation, in your attention. In this moment, there's no longer an observer and something observed. There's only stillness. What you observe is in space and time, but the observer is timeless. I don't speak of the relative observer, the me. I speak of the ultimate observer, consciousness, awareness. All right, look, I'll go on and you tell me at any point that you want to stop. Every object is projected from you and has its home ground in you. Potentially, then, the object seen can bring you to pure seeing. An object heard can bring you to pure hearing. In this hearing and seeing, there is nobody who sees or hears, and no object seen or heard. When you look at an object totally, without a sense of a me, when the me isn't looking at that object, but there is total looking, listening, hearing, observing, without this me, then there is no longer a separation between the observer and the observed. I think that's what he's saying here. Mm-hmm. There is only hearing. There is only seeing. It is not in subject-object relationship. It is completely non-dual. When you come to the understanding that you are not the psychosomatic body, in this moment you have a glimpse of what you are. But you can never have a glimpse of what you are when it is simply a question from the mind. The question, who am I, does not come from the mind. Asking, who am I, is accomplished by a tremendous energy. You are on fire. I think you can compare it to the condensed energy present when you are very angry or completely joyful. I would say this kind of energy must be there to ask the questions, who am I? What am I? What is life? then you have a glimpse of what you are. It's important that you have the glimpse, for this is the understanding of the right perspective. Then you live with the right perspective, and there is less and less dispersion. Your life becomes more and more oriented. You use all your energy in a completely different way. As your life becomes more oriented, you see things differently. Before, you saw things only from the point of view of the me. When you see things from the point of view of the me, you live mechanically in choice, in selection. You may say, I see it, but you don't really see it, because your seeing is colored by selection. Selection for security, for pleasure, to avoid, and so on. But when you have a glimpse of reality, it is already in a certain way in your background. You see things less and less personally. There comes the quality of global vision, where there is no choice, no selection. You see things more and more as they are, not as you wish them to be, but as they really are. You live now without anticipation, without end gaining. You live absolutely in the now. Thinking is a practical, useful tool which you use when you need it, but you no longer think when there is no need to think. There's no more daydreaming. You enjoy really freedom from thought. Oh, you will become a happy man. Questioner, is it possible to say what brings this about, that sudden change? You come to this point through inquiring. You undertake inquiring when there is discrimination and discernment. But the ego cannot discern. Discerning comes from higher reason, from discernment itself. The insight that you are not the psychosomatic body. Inquiring about life calls for a serious character. It takes profound seriousness. Now, a questioner says, when I wake up, sometimes the very thing I wake up with is fear. John, be completely aware when you say there is fear. When you are alert, the question naturally arises, who has fear? Who is afraid? You have my guarantee that when you ask who has fear, the next day you will see, before the fear appears, that the me, which you take yourself to be, is put in relation to certain circumstances in your daily life. The ego saw the circumstances and felt no security. So there is fear, there is anticipation. So first, face the fear, face the sensation fear. You will see that you, the knower of the fear, are not afraid, that only an object has fear. But don't push it away. Face it completely. Explore it in every corner. It is localized in your body somewhere. When you ask the question, who has fear? You will see that the body wakes up in the morning in freedom. But immediately you identify with the old representation of yourself. You put yourself in relation with some activity that you've projected. Remember that the personality who has fear is an object, and the situation which produced the fear is an object too. So now there's a relation from object to object. The moment you see this, you are out of the cage. Don't try to manipulate, touch, or interfere, because all this belongs to the cage and you remain in a vicious circle. You cannot reason your way out of the problem. Only see that you are the knower of the problem and not the problem. When you are still with your real self, there is no fear. Be careful also how you go to sleep. Don't take all your problems to sleep. There is a kind of hygiene in going to sleep and in waking up. Systematically lay your problems at the front door. The word fear is memory. The word fear does not belong to the actual sensation. So free yourself from the concept fear and face only the perception. Then automatically you will know how to observe it, how to look at it with love and compassion. We'll stop, and at this point, any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to hear again?
Well, I'd like to hear that paragraph that I asked you to read again.
The one from before?
Yeah. The observation of the fear. Next page.
So, Evelyn,
Yes.
it's Rita.
Hi, Rita.
I'm just unvideoed. Anyway, my question is, if I'm looking at a sunset and not saying, oh, how beautiful, oh, it was better than last night, or whatever, I'm just looking at the sunset and not thinking about anything about it. I'm just looking and being with the sunset. Is that what we're talking about?
That's right. You're being with it fully present in the now. There's no move. You're saying there's no movement of thoughts going on.
And what is that called? That present? Is that what is that?
Non-conceptual.
That's, yes, well, Paul just said it. It's choiceless, non-conceptual awareness. There's just pure, choiceless awareness. And there is at that point no separation between what you're looking at and that the observer and the observed.
So can that process almost be manipulated? For example, I'm looking at the sunset and the me says, oh, Rita, don't have any opinion about it. Don't think about it. Don't just, and then say to myself, okay, taking all thoughts away, and I'm just going to be looking at the sunset and breathing. Is that manipulation of getting to a place?
I think so. Because the moment you say, or the thought comes, the thought appears, Rita, just don't, whatever you said, don't look at this that way, or don't name it, or don't label it, or now that's the me in present again. Now you've separated yourself from that which you were observing. But the idea is to see that that's what happened. Suddenly, the me has appeared on the scene in this present moment. But the seeing is the doing. So seeing that, I let that go. There's a release from that. There's no comment about it at all. The comment is from the me. It's just seeing it. The me has appeared. And in that moment of seeing it, the plug is pulled on it. And you're back in presence. Present in presence. Present in presence. In the now moment.
I got it. Thanks. Great. Thank you.
Good, good. And you know, that would be the way we want to look not only at a beautiful sunset, and not only at a beautiful tree or beautiful flowers. That's how we would like to look at other human beings. Because if we could look that way at another human being, we have now gotten rid of this separate self, who's looking with, as he said, conclusions, opinions.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's another little thing that I think maybe pops into it, and that's really understanding what you mean by thought and getting into understanding what the thought process is that is the generator of fear and the generator of this I, and the thing that thought has created, the illusion of a separation between the observer and the observed.
Right.
I mean, if you really stop, and when I really stop and think about it, I realize the observer is how I've been programmed to look at it. I've been programmed to look at myself in the Zoom, at you in the picture, and I've been programmed to have this little thing running around in here that says, I am looking at. Well, I'm looking whether I say I am looking or not. I am is superfluous. The act is happening whether I acknowledge it or not. And where the thinking has gone wrong over time has been this creation of, you need an interpreter, you need this I to look, or this I has been created. So I want to quote something, if I may, if I have the liberty.
Sure.
I read this morning, and God damn it, this is so good. It says here, this is from Krishnamurti on The Awakening of Intelligence. And in his chapter of fear, at the end of it, he goes on to say, so I am asking, can I live completely, wholly today? I can only do that when I have understood the whole machinery and the functioning of thought. In the very understanding of the reality of thought, there is silence. So I don't know if the body talks to the brain. I think it's the other way around. I think to try to get a grip on this thing, I think you really have to spend the time and figure out, how does the brain work? How does the mind work? How does this stuff happen? How does this I work? And it's in that understanding that when you do have anxiety, when you do have fear, and you use awareness, then you can do something. You have to point to how the hell this is happening, and you see that it's an illusion of thought. You don't have fear unless you're thinking about it. And if you understand the process, the thinking process that goes on, then I think the silencing comes. mean, you can't produce the silence. Either you do it or you don't.
Right. Right.
That's it.
Right. Yes. So what you're saying then is when you're fully present, with presence in the moment, and you're watching, observing, or witnessing how this mind is moving, how these thoughts are moving as they appear, then that, if you're really doing that, that is stillness, because all the energy is in the observing. So it's not even at that moment that the me is observing. There's just pure, again, choiceless awareness, observing. Now, when there is fear, a fear appears, there can be the me that's looking at that fear, and then there's no separation. The me is the fear, right? There's appearance of fear, and there's the me looking at that fear. That me that's looking at that fear created that fear.
Mm-hmm.
But then, when one is fully present, in presence, there is a witnessing that's outside of the me, outside of time, because the me and thought are in time. But witnessing is outside of that. It's pure, choiceless awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really a beautiful thing
Mm-hmm.
when that happens.
Yeah, because thought is all of thought comes from memory, which is the past.
Right.
So you're creating fear about the future. Fear is always a projection,
Right.
because I mean, I've actually witnessed this. I'm not just talking about this. When you're afraid, when you're really afraid, there's no sense of me being afraid. You're just afraid. There's no conversation of, oh, I'm really, there is so much hype and there's so much adrenaline going on. You're consumed by it. After a certain period of time, then the me starts to analyze that. And boy, I don't want that to ever happen again. And that goes into memory banks. So that the fear is, when you start to analyze it, it's always an analyzation of what happened in the past, and you're projecting it into the future.
Yes. That's why the true seeing can
Right.
only happen in the moment.
That's right. That's it.
Because it's new, it's fresh, it can only happen in the moment, and it doesn't analyze. There's no analyzing with that.
Yeah. So what's happening?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just gonna sit. You go ahead.
Oh, I'm just going to say that in that moment, there's an emptying of the me. In that moment, when there is a pure, choiceless awareness,
The me isn't there.
then there's the emptying of the me. That doesn't mean the me isn't going to show up again. But ultimately, how we want to live our life is with the emptying of this me, and to keep it as empty as possible of the me, not of functioning fully, with clarity, with compassion, We're not talking about giving that up. There's no giving that up. We live in this world.
I add something?
Yeah.
I'm still struggling with this thing of choice. So, for example, if I was going to meet someone and, you know, I sometimes like have this intention, okay, I'm going to try and see this person with fresh eyes, you know, and not, even if like judgments come in, like just let them go and really try and experience the person, which is, you know, a thought or an intention. So, but it's a choice that I'm going to choose this. And when the me gets in the way and comes up with stories about the person, like let it drift away. Like don't get on the train with it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just struggling between the concept of sometimes choosing, like making a conscious choice. Because, you know, it might happen spontaneously when it might not. Or are you saying just notice the stories as they come up? I mean, which is also part of the process, but I think there can be an intention to do that, to notice.
Yes. Yes. When you're with the person and you're really engaged with that person and you see a judgment appear and you actually see it, then it leaves when you actually see it, right? There's no choice. If you don't see it, then you go with the judgment. You'll go with the judgment.
Mm-hmm.
But the minute you see it, you already have stepped out of it, otherwise you wouldn't have seen it. And there's a letting go of it. And there was no choice involved at all. It's almost automatic. The seeing is the doing. It's one movement.
Well, and that's why I thought this was so important here when the questioner says, do I understand you to say that you don't go through any process in order to detach yourself from identification with the me? I mean, that's the heart of it right there. How do I disidentify with this me? And he says, the moment you look at your fear or your anxiety or all your striving for this or for that, even your desire to change, the moment you look at all that, you'll find space between yourself and what you are looking at. You will find yourself outside the process. So as soon as you observe yourself having thoughts, having desires, as soon as you see that as an object of your perception, you're outside it. And being outside creates that space of freedom. You're outside the process, then you are spontaneously detached and not identified. There's nothing else to do to get detached or disidentified. The mere observing of what's going on kicks you out of the process. You're ejected out of the me.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
I was in the driver's seat, right? Driving my fears, driving my desires, or having them drive me. But the moment I step out, I'm ejected outside the process. And I'm in space, observing it all.
I think you're really onto something there, Paul. I think it's that simple. It's that identification with the me. And what you're talking about is the ejection from that identification with the me.
Right.
Yeah. And I
That
think
is so powerful.
mhm.
Yes.
That's really, that's brilliant.
Yes. Yes. And that's emptying the me moment by moment. And as long as there's an awareness. And it's like there is no effort. It's just a seeing.
I always thought along these lines, it was very powerful. I forget who makes the point, but there's no me without the movement of thought.
Right. That's
There is no me without the movement of thought. So if you sit quietly and there's no movement of thought, it's really good to try and see, can you find a me when there's no movement of thought? The me is created with the movement of thought. When there is no thinking, there is no me still observing what's going on. There's observation, but it's not coming from a me, a center.
There's no one looking.
Right.
Yeah,
Is there a you, a me, without the movement of thought? There's a presence, an awareness, but that's not the same as saying it's a me.
right. There's no thing without the movement of thought.
Right.
But you can have movement of thought without the me.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think that idea that you have to sort of reinforce the ejection of the me on a moment-to-moment basis isn't necessarily true either. It's just what happens is we're so habituated into this process of getting into the me and driving it through the day. You know, we wake up, and as we talked about before, if you're really kind of paying attention, when you first wake up, you don't know who you are. You know, the me hasn't really come in yet.
Right.
But then there's a moment where that me, we step into the me vehicle and we start and we perpetuate that. We're in the habituation, we're in the habit of perpetuating the me. So I think it's
Yeah. So
I think so it's that identification with the me, and it's the ejection of the identification with the me. Yeah.
So how do we do that? How does that happen? That we wake up and that 1 or 2 seconds when we wake up, it's just truly the global vision. And then, as you say, the me steps in, and then we're driven by this me. But when does it actually step in? Right? It steps in when now the thoughts start that are psychological thinking that says, oh, what happens if so-and-so calls me today? What happens if I don't get that job? What happens if I can't pay this bill? Right? Oh, I remember what she said to me. Right now, that's the movement of the me. In that moment, if there is an awareness that that's what's moving, we've already stepped out of it. We pull the plug on it. The plug gets pulled spontaneously. We don't do anything actually. And then we're back into the now present moment. But what happens is we are so conditioned to solve this issue, solve this problem, think it through, tell ourselves the story, find justification, find blame, that we literally get onto that and into that. And there it is. There it is. And then we're lost until at some moment there is again that awareness. There was a being lost in the me. So, okay, there's no condemnation. There's no beating oneself up. It really becomes very interesting.
So Evie, what is it that's reminding you to be aware? Is that awareness itself?
Yes,
Mhm.
it is awareness itself. It is awareness itself because now we've gotten an insight into something. We've gotten an insight. There was a pointing. That's what
Right.
these teachings are pointing you
Mhm.
to. They're just pointers. So we've been pointed to a fact that we get lost in this me, and that you are not this me independent of that thinking, that psychological thinking. So now, with that awareness, comes this wonderful awareness. A spotlight shines when this me appears, and you find yourself in fear, in projection, in desire, because then you're no longer in the now. Then, and I always ask this question because I find it so interesting. Where do you live? Then you're either living in the past or you're projecting and living in the future. You're not fully present. That doesn't mean that if you have something to do or a problem has come up that you have to solve, that you don't take care of those things. You do. But it's not through the perspective, the way he said here tonight. Before, I don't know if I could only find how he said that so beautifully. Before, your point of view was always through this me. Now your point of view is through this global vision. Now the point of view is without any kind of opinion of anything, and it's just seeing the what is as it is, not as you want it to be.
There's this, the puppet shows, the hand puppet shows. We've all
Yes.
seen those.
Yes.
So there's the hand puppet show, and you can see the hand coming up, and you can see like whatever it is, Punch and Judy or something. You can see maybe there's one person back there. Well, that's what the ego is. The ego is one of those hand puppets. The self, or the awareness behind it, is actually the arm that animates that. And so the problem, it's not that the me steps in, the self steps in as the me. There's only the self. There's only the self. It steps in as the me, that hand puppet character. So each of us do that. We come in as a hand puppet, and we're thinking that if we're thinking that we're that character, that's where we're wrong, because without that, the hand behind it, there is no character.
So Chip, are we the puppet or the puppeteer, or both?
We're the puppeteer, and the puppet is just simply it's just that one of those little hand mittens that we put on to activate and to play on this stage. And so that's why when Paul was talking about the disidentification with that hand puppet, that's the problem. We think we're that hand puppet, and then there's all this angst surrounding that.
Yes. And we think the puppet is a real person.
Exactly. So when you're talking about taking action, if you want to take action on that stage, the stage of the hand puppets, you put on a hand puppet and you come in and do what you need to do, But recognizing that you're actually the puppeteer, and you can only be the puppeteer, and the puppet can only be animated by the puppeteer.
Right. That's right. Correct.
I was thinking that You know, look what we do in the military. We take guys, put them in a barracks, shave their head, make them all dress alike, strip away all their normal things they identify with, and then the drill instructor becomes the puppeteer, right? So they can all think like a mass, breaking down their individual identities.
I want to just read this again because I think it's really so poignant right now. But when you have a glimpse of reality, it is already in a certain way in your background. You see things less and less personally. There comes the quality of global vision, where there is no choice, no selection. You see things more and more as they are, not as you wish them to be, but as they really are. You live now without anticipation, without end gaining. You live absolutely in the now. Thinking is a practical, useful tool which you use when you need it. But you no longer think when there's no need to think. You know, Jean once told us, when the personality is needed, the personality appears. And when it is not needed, it just isn't there. And that's what he's saying here. But it's not through the eyes of a personal me. It's through a global vision. You know, we also asked him, how do we know that we've arrived, that we've got it? How do we know this? And he said, there will no longer be any fear, and there will no longer be any desire. Because what can you desire? Anything that you desire is for your happiness, right? I mean, we desire things to make us happy. We don't desire things that are going to hurt us. We desire things to make us happy. But the greatest desire of all desires is to be one with who you really are. Because there is no happiness through an object that will give you, and I didn't even think the word is give you, that you will know happiness the way you know it when there is no longer a me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't speak for anyone else, but waking up tomorrow morning will be a new experience.
How so?
Well, you know, it's like we were talking, and Chip was saying that first moment when you open your eyes. And of course, we're surrounded by familiar surroundings. You know, when I wake up and the first thing I do is look at the clock. It's like my clock on my dresser, in my, you know, it's right away the whole me construct comes into being. If you woke up tomorrow morning in a totally different place where you had no associations, you probably for a second stay in a pure state of awareness a little longer, because you wouldn't, the me wouldn't immediately get triggered by the familiarity. But we do have that moment on first awakening.
Yes.
That first split second of awakening, when the awareness is for a short, briefest time, uncontaminated with associations and thought, savoring that.
And I think we're very fortunate. I mean, I think if to some extent we can stay in bed for a little while, we don't have to hop up. We don't have to get woken by an alarm clock.
Mm-hmm.
If we're able to give ourselves, 5 minutes or something, or just, not even thinking of it that way. If we don't have to feel pressure
Right.
from that we have to do something, we're very fortunate to
Mm-hmm.
sort of, because I find, that, and I'm sure you find it too, is that you can just stay in that place between sleep state, waking state. It's kind of like an in-between place where your ego doesn't really assert its hold, and it doesn't have to assert its hold. We recognize it doesn't have to. So we're very fortunate to be able to play with that.
Yeah.
That's true.
And see where it takes us.
That's true.
Or or not go anywhere.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Playing with that moment.
Yep.
Being in that moment.
Being in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So,
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
very nice talk.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Paul.
Thank
See
you.
you all
Thank
next
all.
week.
Thank you.
Okay.
See you
Have
next
a good
week.
week, everyone.
Good
Bye-bye.
week.
Thanks.
You too.
Same
Thank
to you.
you.
much.
Be safe, all.
Yep.
Yes.
Buonanotte.
Yeah.
Buonanotte.
Buonanotte.